I can't believe I'm even saying this out loud. But here I am, heart hammering against my ribs, standing next to my dead car in the driveway, already running late for my own father's wedding. My name is Rebecca, Becca to the people who really know me, and I'm 38 years old, a freelance editor who's spent the last 2 years trying to put my life back together after a quiet, painful divorce. I thought I had everything under control, until today. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Not about him, not about Logan, my stepbrother, the one man I've spent 12 years pretending I don't notice in that way. But when my car wouldn't start and he pulled up offering me a ride, something inside me shifted. A dangerous little spark I thought I'd buried long ago. God, the guilt is already twisting in my stomach, but there's this other feeling too. This warm, curious pull that makes me wonder what would happen if I just let myself feel it for once. I keep telling myself it's nothing, just nerves about the wedding, just the late summer heat making everything feel too close. But the moment I saw him step out of his car, that easy smile on his face, my breath caught in a way it hasn't in years. If you've ever carried a secret longing you knew could change everything, you already understand. I hesitated for a second, keys still in my useless ignition, before I grabbed my bag and walked toward him. The warm, golden evening breeze brushed across my skin as I slid into the passenger seat. The leather was warm from the sun. His scent, clean, masculine, faintly woody, filled the small space and wrapped around me before I could stop it. He looked over at me, one hand resting on the wheel, and for a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavy, too heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath along with me. My pulse was already racing, and we hadn't even left the driveway yet. I shouldn't want this kind of tension. I shouldn't be wondering what it would feel like if things were different. But as he shifted into drive and the car began to move, a quiet voice in my head whispered that maybe, just maybe, I was already losing control. And we still had hours of road ahead of us. The engine hummed softly as Logan eased us out of the driveway and onto the quiet suburban street. I kept my eyes forward at first, watching the late summer sunlight filter through the trees, but I could feel him glancing over at me, that familiar half smile playing on his lips. "You okay, Becca?" His voice was low, warm, the same voice that used to echo through our old family house years ago. "You looked a little rattled back there." I let out a soft breath, trying to sound casual. My car picked the worst possible day to die. "I'm just glad you were still around. I didn't want to miss Dad's wedding because of a dead battery." He chuckled quietly, the sound settling somewhere deep in my chest. "Good thing I offered then? Long drive ahead. Might as well catch up properly. It's been, what, almost 3 years since we were in the same room for more than 10 minutes? "Something like that," I murmured. 12 years of carefully measured distance, and now here we were, trapped together in this car for the next few hours. The thought sent a strange little flutter through me. As the road opened up into rolling countryside, the golden fields stretched out on either side. Logan relaxed one hand on the wheel while the other rested near the gear shift, dangerously close to where my own hand lay on my lap. We started talking, small things at first. How his architecture projects in Denver were going, how my editing work had kept me sane after the divorce. But the conversation slowly drifted deeper. "Remember that summer we all went to the lake house?" he asked, his tone softening. "You were what, 25? I was 23. You spent the whole week reading on the dock while the rest of us acted like idiots." I smiled despite myself. "I remember. You kept trying to get me to come swim, said I was missing all the fun. You always looked so peaceful sitting there," he said, glancing over again. This time, his eyes lingered a second longer than they should have. "Like you were in your own world. I used to wonder what you were thinking about." My breath caught. The way he said it, it wasn't just casual nostalgia. There was something underneath, something that made the warm air in the car feel suddenly thicker. I shifted slightly in my seat, crossing my legs, trying to ignore the way my pulse had picked up. I was probably thinking about how complicated everything already felt back then, I admitted, my voice quieter than I intended. New family, new brother, trying to figure out where I fit. Logan was silent for a long moment, the kind of silence that felt full, heavy, the kind where you can almost hear the other person's thoughts. His fingers flexed on the steering wheel, then relaxed again. "You always fit, Becca," he said finally, "even when you thought you didn't." The sun was beginning to dip lower, painting everything in that perfect warm glow. I turned my head to look at him properly, the sharp line of his jaw, the way a few strands of hair fell across his forehead. He looked back. For 3 full heartbeats, our eyes held. Too long, too honest. Then the car rolled over a gentle dip in the road. My hand slid across the seat and brushed against his. Not even fully touching, just the edge of my fingers grazing the side of his hand. A spark shot through me, hot and sudden. I didn't pull away immediately. Neither did he. In that tiny moment, with the countryside sliding past us and the wedding still miles away, something inside me trembled. A quiet, dangerous awareness that this ride was already becoming so much more than just a ride, and we still had so far to go. The countryside kept unfolding around us in soft golden waves, but my mind was no longer on the road. That tiny brush of our hands still lingered on my skin like a brand I couldn't shake. I pulled my fingers back slowly, resting them in my lap, but the warmth stayed. Logan didn't say anything right away. He just kept driving, jaw tight, eyes fixed ahead like he was fighting the same current I was. The silence stretched between us again, thicker this time, comfortable and terrifying all at once. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, steady, but faster than it should be. Every few seconds I'd steal another glance at him. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his fingers flexed on the wheel. He caught me looking once. Our eyes met, and neither of us looked away quickly enough. "Tell me something," he said after a while, his voice lower, almost intimate in the quiet car. "After the divorce, did you ever think about calling me?" The question landed soft but heavy. My breath caught. "I thought about it," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "More than once. But what would I have said? 'Hi, Logan, it's your stepsister. My marriage fell apart and I don't know why I keep thinking about you?'" He let out a quiet laugh, but it wasn't light. It was rough around the edges. I would have answered. That simple answer sent heat rising through my chest. I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of how small the car felt, how close our bodies were in this shared space. The warm breeze coming through the cracked window carried the scent of late summer grass and something that was just him. We talked more after that. Real talk. The kind we'd never allowed ourselves before. He told me about the lonely nights in Denver, how some projects felt empty no matter how successful they looked. I told him how scared I'd been after the divorce, how I'd thrown myself into work so I wouldn't have to feel anything. The conversation flowed so easily, it frightened me, like we'd been waiting 12 years to finally say these things. At one point, he reached over to adjust the air vent, and his arm brushed against mine. Not accidental this time. Slower. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it felt endless. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, a flush of warmth spreading from that single point of touch all the way down my arm. I didn't move away. I let myself feel it, the dangerous sweetness of it. "You're quiet again," he murmured, glancing over. His voice had that slight huskiness now, the one that made my stomach tighten. "I'm just thinking," I whispered. "Thinking about how wrong this feeling is. Thinking about how right it feels anyway. Thinking about what would happen if I reached over and rested my hand on his." The sun dipped lower, bathing the rolling hills in honey-colored light. Logan slowed the car just a little as the road curved gently. In that softer speed, everything felt more intimate. The space between us grew smaller even though we hadn't moved. I could feel the heat coming off his body. Or maybe it was mine. It was getting harder to tell. "Have you ever felt something you knew you shouldn't?" I asked suddenly, my voice barely above a breath. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "Something that made you question everything you thought you believed?" Logan's hand tightened on the wheel. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me, really looked. and the silence that followed felt heavier than any words could. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. The air in the car had grown thick, charged, like right before a summer storm, even though the sky was perfectly clear. He finally spoke, so softly I almost missed it. "Every time I'm around you, Becca." Those words hit me somewhere deep. Something shifted inside me, a quiet surrender I wasn't ready for. I turned toward him more, my shoulder brushing the seat, my knee angled slightly closer to his, close enough that if either of us moved even an inch, we'd touch again. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. My breath came shallower now. I could feel the warmth of his presence, like a touch that hadn't happened yet. The way his chest rose and fell, the subtle scent of him mixing with the warm evening air. My mind kept flashing to all the years we'd spent carefully not noticing each other, and now, in this car, it felt like every unsaid thing was pressing in on us at once. I reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, and my fingers trembled. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes dropped to my hand for a second, before returning to the road, but that glance felt like a caress. If you're watching this and you've ever sat inches away from someone you knew you couldn't have, you know how dangerous that kind of closeness can be, how it makes you lose control without even moving. I was losing mine, slowly, breath by breath. Logan swallowed. I watched the movement in his throat. Then, as if he couldn't help it, he let his right hand drift off the wheel and rest on the center console, only inches from my leg. The almost touch hovered there, heavy and tempting. My skin tingled in anticipation. I could feel the pull, magnetic, undeniable. Just as my fingers started to move, almost on their own, a soft chime came from his phone mounted on the dash, a reminder for the wedding. The sound broke the moment like shattering glass. We both pulled back at the same time. Not far, but enough. The tension didn't disappear, though. It simply settled deeper, warmer, more insistent. I pressed my lips together, trying to steady my breathing. We were still miles from the venue, and I already felt completely undone. The worst part? I didn't want it to stop. I wanted to keep falling. The chime from his phone still echoed in my ears, but it did nothing to cool the heat building between us. Logan cleared his throat and focused back on the road, yet I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers kept flexing against the wheel. My heart refused to slow down. Every breath felt heavier, like the warm evening air inside the car had grown thicker with everything we weren't saying. We drove in silence for several long minutes. The golden light had softened into deeper amber, painting the rolling hills in hues that made everything feel dreamlike. Too intimate, too beautiful for what was happening inside me. I kept replaying that almost touch, the way my skin had tingled with anticipation. My body reacted in ways I couldn't control, a slow, fluttering warmth spreading through my chest, down into my stomach, making me shift restlessly in my seat. "Becca," he said finally, his voice rough and low. "If this is too much, if you want me to pull over and call someone else." "No," I whispered before I could stop myself. The word came out too fast, too honest. "I don't want anyone else." That confession hung between us. Logan's breath deepened. I watched his chest rise and fall, matching the unsteady rhythm of my own. Without thinking, I turned slightly toward him, my knee brushing the edge of the console. The space between us felt electric now, dangerous. He glanced over, eyes dark with something I'd never let myself name before. Then, as if the pull had finally become too strong, he eased the car onto a quiet, scenic overlook off the main road. "Just for a moment," he said, "to stretch our legs." But we both knew it wasn't about stretching. The engine went quiet. The warm breeze carried through the open windows, rustling my dress against my thighs. Logan turned toward me fully now, our eyes locked, and this time neither of us looked away. The silence felt so heavy I could barely breathe. "I've thought about this," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "More times than I should have. 12 years of telling myself you were off limits, my stepsister, family." Hearing him say it out loud sent a shiver through me. My hand moved before my mind could catch up, resting lightly on the console, palm up, trembling just slightly. An invitation I had no right to offer. Logan looked down at it for a long moment. Then his hand slid over, covering mine, not gripping, just resting there, skin against skin. The contact was so simple, yet it undid me completely. Heat rushed through every inch of my body. My breath caught sharply, and I felt something deep inside me shift, like a lock finally giving way. His thumb brushed gently across the back of my hand, slow and deliberate, sending sparks racing up my arm. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Instead, I turned my hand over, letting our fingers intertwine. Logan. His name left my lips like a secret I'd been holding too long. My voice sounded different, softer, huskier, full of everything I tried to deny. He leaned closer, just a few inches, but it felt like crossing an ocean. I could feel the warmth of his breath against my cheek. Our foreheads nearly touched. My heart hammered so hard I was sure he could hear it. The scent of him surrounded me completely now, warm and masculine and so achingly familiar. My free hand rose instinctively, hovering near his chest, not quite touching but close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. We stayed like that, suspended in that almost moment. So close, too close. I could feel the tremble in his fingers matching my own. Desire and guilt twisted together inside me until I couldn't tell them apart anymore. This was wrong. This was everything I'd sworn I'd never allow. Yet in that golden evening light, with his hand holding mine and our faces inches apart, it felt like the most honest thing I'd done in years. I shouldn't want this, I breathed, my lips barely moving. But I do. God help me, I do. His eyes darkened with the same conflict, the same hunger. For one breathtaking second, I thought he might close the distance completely. My body leaned in on its own, pulled by a force stronger than reason. The silence between us grew heavier, sweeter, more tempting. Then a distant car passed on the main road, breaking the spell just enough. We didn't let go of each other's hands right away. We lingered there, fingers still intertwined, breathing each other in. Something fundamental had changed in that quiet overlook. The line we'd both pretended didn't exist had been crossed, not with dramatic action, but with a touch that said everything words never could. When we finally pulled back and he started the car again, the air between us felt permanently altered, warmer, more dangerous. I stared out the window as the hills rolled by, my hand still tingling where his had been, my pulse refusing to settle. We were almost at the wedding venue now, but I already knew the real ceremony, the one that mattered, had happened right here in this car, and there was no going back. The lights of the lakeside venue appeared through the trees sooner than I wanted them to. Golden lanterns glowed softly against the darkening sky. Music drifted faintly on the warm evening breeze, and my stomach twisted into a knot so tight I could barely breathe. Logan slowed the car as we pulled into the parking area, the tires crunching softly over gravel. Neither of us spoke. The silence now felt different, heavier, full of everything that had just happened between us. I kept my eyes on the dashboard, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying it. The way his hand had covered mine, the warmth of his skin, how close our faces had been, breaths mingling, hearts racing in perfect, dangerous sync. That almost kiss that never quite happened, but somehow felt more intimate than anything I'd experienced in years. My body still hummed with it. Heat lingered on my palm where his thumb had traced slow circles. My chest felt tight, flushed, alive in a way that terrified me. What have I done? Guilt crashed over me like a wave the moment the car came to a stop. This is Logan, my stepbrother, the man who's been part of my family for 12 years. I watched my father build a new life with his mother, and now here I was, wanting the one person I should never want. The shame burned hot in my cheeks, but it couldn't extinguish the other feeling, this deep, aching desire that refused to fade. If anything, it only grew stronger the closer we got to the venue. I glanced over at him. His hands were still on the wheel, knuckles slightly pale. He looked as shaken as I felt. "Becca," he started, voice rough and low. "Don't," I whispered, cutting him off gently. "Not yet. I need a minute." I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat, trying to steady my breathing. Every second of that overlook played again in my mind, the way the air had felt charged, the magnetic pull that made me lean in, the trembling in my fingers as they intertwined with his. I could still feel it, all of it. And the worst part? I didn't want to forget. I wanted to remember. I wanted to relive it. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, not from sadness exactly, but from the overwhelming conflict tearing through me. I'm 38 years old. I should know better. I should be wiser, more controlled. Yet right now, all I could think about was how safe and dangerous he made me feel at the same time. How, for the first time since my divorce, I felt truly seen, truly wanted. "I shouldn't feel this way about you," I said softly, almost to myself. "But I do, and it's terrifying how much I don't want it to stop." Logan turned toward me in the dim light of the parking lot. His eyes held mine with that same intensity from earlier. For a moment, it felt like we might pick up right where we left off, hands reaching, breaths shortening, that irresistible pull drawing us back together. Instead, he simply reached over and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. The touch was feather light, but it sent fresh warmth cascading through me. My breath caught again. My body reacted instantly, that deep, fluttering pull low in my stomach that reminded me I was still very much losing control. "We should go inside," he murmured, though he made no move to open his door. "They're probably waiting." I nodded, but my hand lingered near his on the console for one final second. A silent promise, a quiet admission that this wasn't over. As I stepped out of the car and felt the warm evening air on my flushed skin, the guilt and desire continued their battle inside my chest. Part of me wanted to run back to the safety of my old life, the careful, controlled version of Rebecca who never crossed these lines. But a much louder, much braver part of me already knew the truth. I wanted more, even if it was wrong, even if it was dangerous, even if it could change everything, especially because it already had. The wedding reception hummed softly around us, but I barely heard the music or the laughter. All I could feel was the lingering echo of Logan's hand in mine from that quiet overlook. We had slipped inside separately, but our eyes kept finding each other across the room. Every glance carried the weight of what had happened between us on that long drive. I stood near the edge of the lantern-lit terrace later that evening, the warm night air brushing against my skin, when Logan stepped up beside me. Not too close for anyone to notice, but close enough for me to feel him. My breath caught the same way it had in the car. "I don't regret it," I whispered, finally saying the truth out loud. That's what scares me the most. I'm 38 years old, freshly divorced, and I've spent years convincing myself I was fine alone. But sitting in that car with you, feeling seen, feeling wanted in a way I haven't in so long, it woke something up in me, something I didn't even know was sleeping. Yes, you're my stepbrother. Yes, this is complicated and dangerous. But for the first time in years, I feel alive, and I can't apologize for that. He turned slightly toward me, his voice low and intimate. "Neither can I. We didn't touch. We didn't need to." The connection we had crossed in that car was still there, humming quietly between us, promising more stolen moments, more quiet confessions, more dangerous almosts in the days ahead. If you've ever felt something this real, this forbidden, tell me honestly, would you have stepped away? Have you ever wanted someone you knew you shouldn't? If this story touched something in you, please subscribe. It means more than you know. And drop a comment below. Is it wrong to want something that feels this right? Because for me, the ride may have ended tonight, but whatever this is between us, it's only just beginning.